Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening and welcome again to Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On satellite imagery from yesterday, we had a band of clouds here, weakening front pushing on in, taking a little longer to get through the northern areas, but rain changing into showers down to the south and stronger westerly flow. Colder air streaming eastward as well, originating from the Bering Sea out here, coming southward, then taking a turn to the east and just undercutting Kodiak Island. A trough on the north side of that to the north there, edging up toward the coastline. Band of clouds through the southern interior and then some breaks, and pretty good afternoon up there in the Tanana Valley. And then for rolling that one more time, you can see the main low center right in that area south of the Kenai Peninsula, east of Kodiak Island, and a band of clouds out here along the southwest coast. And that hasn't changed a whole lot. We still have that zone right through here with areas of snow in it up to St. Lawrence Island. Also areas of snow, mostly cloudy skies over the southwest interior on up to the northeast to the eastern Arctic coast. And some breaks here along the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula. Also up into south central Alaska, still looking at some shower activity along the North Gulf Coast. And another band pushing eastward while this area tends to come a little bit northward there. You can see more showers moving on into the central panhandle. Breaks through the Copper River Basin, sunshine this afternoon right up into the eastern Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, and up here farther to the north. Otherwise, a lot of cloudiness over the interior today with a lot more clearing taking place along the Alaska Peninsula on out to just near the Pribilof Islands. Not much change out here over the Bering Sea, just cloudiness, scattered snow showers, light wind conditions, weak high pressure. And the next storm, you can see, well, quite clearly here coming up on the from the south, and that's about this position late this afternoon. So the front's still a ways down there. One trough again, this one sliding eastward, this one edging its way northward and getting hung up along the coastline with rain and snow showers along that one and rain showers for the panhandle, clearing over the eastern interior. Weak trough right through here, a couple of low centers, about 1,005 millibars, and areas of snow here along the southwest coast and offshore northeastward. Also here with the main trough northeast, or that was northwestward, northeast up into the Koyukuk Valley on over to the eastern Brooks Range. High pressure controlling the Arctic coast, and clear skies, but cold temperatures dropping, well, as low as 20 degrees below zero in some areas of the northwest interior here this morning. But of course warming up with the sunshine this afternoon. And out to the west, again, high pressure in control out there, not all that strong, but keeping the precipitation, what there is of it, on the light side. So we've just got weak northerly flow now coming down from the Bering Strait down across the eastern Aleutians, and you can see probably some pretty good sunshine at times there from anywhere from Adak and Atka eastward to Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, especially the Alaska Peninsula, northward to the Pribilofs. Well, looking at the forecast for tonight, this system brings gale force winds and rain northward with the front coming up about this position by 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. And still one more trough here in the increasing easterly flow on the north side as that system approaches. That's going to keep a lot of clouds and showers in along the, well, from Prince William Sound, especially in toward Passage Canal on the west side of the sound there, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, right on back down toward Kodiak Island. On the lee side of the mountains, don't look for anything from, or for Cook Inlet on up into the Madanuska or even Susitna valleys. This area here more up against the western Alaska Range with some scattered mixture of precipitation with that. Otherwise, pretty good here over the central interior or up into the Tanana Valley, into the Kuskokwim Valley. Nice conditions continue in the Copper River Basin. Then there's still a band of light snow or flurries here with that trough. Not moving a whole lot, still about in the same place, but it seems to be a little farther to the south for tonight than it was this afternoon, extending right down toward Nunivak Island with areas of light snow and in across Kuskokwim Bay. Otherwise, out to the west, not much in the way of anything going on. A weak trough may increase the snow showers, but definitely not the wind conditions out there. And watch for the winds to gradually increase late tonight along the Alaska Peninsula. And then, of course, by tomorrow, even stronger winds in store for the Alaska Peninsula there, up into Bristol Bay. And good winds into Kodiak Island because you got 60 miles an hour in advance of the front, and gale force winds right up, well, from Kodiak, gale force winds, Shelikof Strait, advancing northward to the North Gulf Coast and also increasing here along the southeast coast, with the gale showing up first in the southern zones, working northward, maybe only reaching 30 knots by tomorrow afternoon there in that northern zone, and quite light winds off to the east through the inside waters until probably tomorrow evening, tomorrow night as the front edges in closer. So most of the day, not bad here over the inside waters, with starting out with some sunshine, which may linger in the afternoon there for Wrangell on up to Juneau and Haines. And also the interior looking really nice as well. This band up here continues to narrow and maybe slip a little bit farther to the north, but becomes quite weak. Just clouds, maybe some flurries for the Nome over to Koyuk area, northeastward there to the Eastern Brooks Range, and fair on the north side of that with maybe some clearing as well. Otherwise, increasing wind. There'll probably be a mixture here through this zone for the Aleutian Range, but definitely warmer air spreading back that way. And then back into the snow showers, probably increasing a little bit there as those northerly winds increase here for Nelson Lagoon, King Cove, Cold Bay, and those locations, and to a lesser extent for the Fox Islands. Otherwise, not looking at any change out to the west there. Light winds, western Arctic coast, all the way down across all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And looking ahead to Tuesday, that first front really never makes landfall. And it was hard to kind of define temperature-wise or wind-wise exactly where it is, but it's probably why we have such a big area of precipitation here in the North Gulf Coast, because that's the original front right in there that's fading away, all streaming eastward into the peninsula, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, Kodiak. So a couple of wet days coming up for Kodiak Island, with tomorrow being the windier of the two. And then another system develops here and tracks northeastward, and so by the afternoon, look for high-end gales to come into the southeast coast. I think there's 45 knots in the afternoon for the southern southeast coast, and then lighter up to the north, but rain heavy at times spreading in with that next system. And again, rain along the North Gulf Coast cuts off, probably a dry day. Copper River Basin, mostly cloudy, becomes partly cloudy to maybe mostly sunny for the Tanana Valley areas, right on up into the Koyukuk Valley and Kobuk Valley to the western Arctic coast, and maybe some mixed moisture here for Bristol Bay into the Kobuk Mountain or the Kilbrook Mountains, and then a zone of snow here from the Seward Peninsula southward to the Alaska Peninsula, and right along the coastline there, really the demarcation of the cold air back to the west and the warmer air sliding up over that colder air. And just scattered snow showers, maybe not quite as widespread as what I've got on here, but mostly cloudy skies, light winds continue, so really not looking at any change there, except for the winds to increase here. St. Lawrence Island back up to 20 knots, brisk wind advisory south of Nunivak Island, on down to the south, so increase in the wind in this area, otherwise no change on out to the west. Also an increase in the winds here, coming up to about 30 knots on the eastern Arctic coast. Could be some areas of light snow to go along with that, but lighter winds, dry conditions back to the west. For temperatures this afternoon, upper 30s to mid 40s for the Panhandle, with 41 there at Klawock and 39 Elfin Cove. Skagway pushed up to 43, 34 Yakutat, and temperatures 40 degrees there at Seward and Palmer, 36 and Kenai, and 35 down at Homer. Kodiak right around 40 degrees there, 39 at the State Airport, 42 in Talkeetna. Lower 40s up in the Tanana Valley, not quite as high as yesterday's readings, but Eagle did push up to 49. That was a 4 p.m. reading, and 33 degrees up at Fort Yukon, while the Brooks Range, kind of a range from -2 at Anatuvik to 24 above at Arctic Village, and the Arctic coast anywhere from a little below 0 to 10 above there, with 9 at Kaktovik, 2 Cape Lisburne, 6 at Kivalina. Ambler up to 20 degrees this afternoon. and 0 at Shishmaref, 21 there at Nome, and then right around the freeze point here for the mid-Kuskokwim Yukon River valleys, cooling into the lower to mid-20s on out toward the coastline. Same thing for Savunga down to the Pribilofs, edging above freezing, 1 degree warmer than they were at this time yesterday for both St. Paul and St. George, and mid-30s around Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, mid-upper 30s on out to the west. For the lows for tonight, 20s, Bristol Bay to near 30 for the Aleutians, cooling down as you head north to about 10 degrees for St. Lawrence Island, and north and west of the mountains, mostly in the teens to lower 20s, and south of the mountains, mid-20s to lower 30s. Down to the North Gulf Coast, mid-30s, and then above freezing for all the Panhandle, north and west of the Brooks Range. We're looking at temperatures to fall back to the dark side of 0. And then those will barely rise, if at all, back to the positive side of 0 up here along the Arctic coast. But look for the Tanana Valley coming back up toward 50 degrees again tomorrow afternoon with maybe some mostly sunny skies, possibly variable high clouds, and mid-40s all the way down into south central Alaska, and also for the Panhandle lower to mid-40s with lower 30s out over the Aleutians, gradually warming as you head west. And for flying weather, got a band IFR along that area of light snow here from the southern side of the Brooks Range southwestward across the Seward Peninsula to just north of Nunivak Island, areas of marginal VFR eastern Arctic coast northward through the strait, cutting eastward along the central coast to the east, mostly along or just off the coast. IFR lingering here, maybe along the Alaska range, and marginal IFR also lingering over the northern Panhandle. And then with that next storm coming up tomorrow, here comes the band of IFR with the front, still off the coast by 4 p.m., but definitely rolling into Kodiak Island early tomorrow morning and starting to slide northward on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Otherwise, VFR over much of the interior. IFR there, south side of the Brooks Range, Seward Peninsula there. Otherwise pretty good out over the Bering Sea and even the Arctic coast, maybe a little bit of marginal stuff on the east side. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR, either approach tomorrow or mostly on the southern approach, the lowest conditions. Same thing for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, again, lowest conditions developing into the afternoon tomorrow night. Will be on the eastern entrances of both passes. And for rainy, looks like it'll be VFR all day tomorrow. For windy, same forecast, maybe some marginal VFR, especially early in the day here on this southern entrance. VFR in the afternoon, Isabel VFR, Mentasta VFR, Tonito wide open, Portage IFR, lowest on the east side. For Chilcoot and White, good VFR tomorrow. And then for the freezing levels, at the surface here, still down late tonight, early tomorrow morning, south of the Alaska Peninsula, right up into Cook Inlet, North Gulf Coast, southeastward, and 2,000 to 4,000 feet now coming up over the eastern Gulf of Alaska off the coast of the Panhandle. And moving on to icing. For tomorrow afternoon, again, front moisture coming northward, so icing will be making landfall sometime by midday to into the afternoon, by morning here, possibly for Kodiak Island, sliding back to the west, and then that whole mess advancing toward the southeast coast. And another zone up here with the light snow, possible rime icing above about 4,000 feet of the light variety. And for the winds aloft, looking at ridging here, ahead of that storm here back to the southwest, ridging right up into the interior. Pretty nice day coming up in that area with a good jet here, 150 knots, as that whole system starts to swing to the north. And then for 9,000 feet, really strong winds ahead of that front, 60 to 70 knots, staying back to the west here and south of the coast, but rolling right into Kodiak Island tomorrow. Then northerlies 30 to 50 knots there on the west side, light up the coastline, and Arctic coast maybe 25 knots, light winds out to the west. And for 3,000 feet, again, an increase in the winds here a little bit tomorrow afternoon for the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutians. Northeast 50 knots, east-northeast 50, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, coming across the southern Gulf, 50 to 60 knot easterlies. Again, the whole pattern shifting northward throughout the day. Southeast 20 to 35 along the coast. Much lighter winds, more variable, but all tending to go easterly throughout the afternoon and starting to pick up. And then no change on up to the north. As turbulence goes, as the winds come northward and increase, so will the turbulence follow. Kenai Peninsula tomorrow afternoon, right down across Kodiak, maybe even possible severe for smaller aircraft for Kodiak in advance of the front. And all that's starting to edge its way eastward here toward the southern southeast coast. pretty smooth through the interior, smooth over the Bering Sea and Aleutians with light to isolated moderate chop Wainwright eastward here over to Inuvik. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
I had a friend that used to say, wow, Alaska's cool, man. You can walk outside your front door and die. My name's William Fulton. I usually go by Will or Willie. Fly for Seahawk Air in Kodiak, Alaska. Well, flying a 1953 de Havilland Beaver on floats. The Beaver is really the best for float plane work, the best airplane ever built, you know, for the kind of things we do. It's big enough to carry a good sized load, but it's yet small enough to handle by one person can handle it on the water, you know, in pretty much any wind and you know, but it's built similar to the cars of that era, you know, lots of metal. You think of how many cars from 1953 are on the road today? Not very many, just real well built and tough. I really don't think too many people here take it for granted. They still appreciate the beauty of the island and seeing the wildlife, seeing whales. The people that live here, a lot of them live here for that reason, you know. And then the tourists, Kodiak isn't really a tourist-based economy, it's commercial fishing, you know, so rely on a lot of different things. Oh, the weather here is always a challenge. You have to enjoy it. If you let it bother you, you wouldn't make it here long. But you know, when you're flying or boating, any way getting around, really, you have to be very respectful of the weather. Yeah, you know, weather dictates when you go certain places. A lot of delays, you know, a lot of delays for people that we fly. Even delays on the commercial airlines coming and going from Kodiak. So you just have to be patient. It teaches you patience living here. Something that we're not all born with, a lot of patience. I look at it as a great equalizer, you know. You could have a check for $1 million and we couldn't come pick you up, you know, and then you could be trapped. Kodiak is one of the few places in the world where you can actually still get weathered in. You know, you can get weathered in for days here, where no airplanes, no boats, no way out, which is pretty good, you know. No matter who you are or what you're doing, you may get stuck. What sets flying in Alaska apart is the necessity of it. You know, it's huge. Most of the places on Kodiak Island, you know, there's very little road, so you have to fly or take a boat. It's vital for mail. I've flown mail planes. It's vital for groceries to villages or people living remote. We are a lifeline for freight. I mean, we do a lot of medevac type trips when people get hurt. So you know, we're the first responder in a lot of that. You know, we see good with bad. Unfortunately, I've seen you know, suicides, boat disasters, airplane crashes, you know, a lot of different things as a pilot. You just have to be ready. I guess that's part of it. There's a few different people I drop off where you know, in the back of your mind, you're a little worried whether they're going to be there when you come back to pick them up. So I always hope they are. It's kind of tough when you go to pick somebody up and you know, they're not there. There's not much left of them. Timothy Treadwell, the movie and you know, the event, all that. It seems like a long time ago now, but just another. It seems like just another Alaskan tragedy. You know, there's been a few of those when you think about the Into the Wild story and the Treadwell story, and there's other people doing similar things out there. So it still goes on. Being there when people need you, and well, that makes you stop and think that, wow, what you do is really important.
People come from all over the world and they just can't believe when they round the corner up here on a busy Wednesday or Thursday and see 10 to 13 of them in a row. You know, it's quite a sight to see. It's really the crossroads of the world. You can go from Anchorage to Frankfurt, Germany in typically 8 to 9 hours. In Asia, you can be in Hong Kong, or you can be in Tokyo, or you can be in Seoul in 8 to 9 hours using Anchorage as an international gateway. It's the perfect spot for cargo operations to come in. The 2 aircraft arrived. They're doing a cargo transload. We have just a specific amount of time to make sure that the cargo gets on the other aircraft and we get it out of here. It's not uncommon for us to handle as many as 46 airplanes in a day, and it is one of the busiest cargo airports in the world. I think if you were to narrow it down to, what is probably the biggest commodity, well, I would have to say it's probably consumer electronics, especially the iPhones, the iPads, things of that nature that are coming out of the factories in Asia into North America to hit the retail stores. That's a big item. I've kind of grown up in aviation. I've had an uncle that had a helicopter and flying business called Kenai Air Alaska down in Kenai. He started way back in the early 50s hauling drill bits, and I was a gas boy. So I filled up Super Cubs and helicopters and, kind of grew up around the business. We've basically seen it all. Cars coming from BMW, from Mercedes-Benz, and these are basically top secret. They are hush-hush. They are not even on the market. And they come in and then they're tested in different parts of Alaska for cold weather testing. We've hauled large pieces of oil industry equipment. We've seen sharks, we've seen whales, we've seen everything. But the kitchen sink. There are so many international carriers that serve Anchorage, giving you a whole different perspective on what lies just 8 or 9 hours away. And in many cases, there is a lot of cross-cultural exchange in Anchorage that allows all of us to experience other parts of the world. And I think because of that, we grow richer as a community. And it definitely has a positive impact on me, and we're in a unique advantage that we get to see this.
Today, coming up to gale force during the afternoon, 40 knots through much of the coastline. Taking a little longer to the north there, but they should come up to minimum gales by late tomorrow afternoon. Seas building 16 to 17 feet. Inside waters, light winds northern Lynn Canal, coming up to small craft advisories for Clarence Strait. And then for Tuesday, with the next storm coming in from the southwest there, 40 to 45 knot winds in the afternoon for the southern coast. Minimum gales up to the north, and we've got 20 knots for Stevens Passage picking up, increasing again in the afternoon for Clarence Strait at 30 knots. Falling pressures to the south result in northerly winds for Lynn Canal, but only 15 knots. And then for, for tomorrow, Prince William Sound, northeast, 25 knots, small craft brisk wind advisories for Cook Inlet. Gales from Kachemak Bay south across Shelikof Strait, east side of Kodiak Island, 45 knot easterlies from the Barrens eastward. And then for Tuesday, these winds will come back up to 40 knots during the day. And then looking roughly 30 knot easterlies there from the western North Gulf Coast all the way down the east side of Kodiak Island, northeasterlies Shelikof Strait all the way up into northern Cook Inlet. And then for Bristol Bay, north winds 30 knots, 25 knots here on the north side of the peninsula. Gale force winds from the north and northeast here from Cape Sarachev all the way up to Sitkinak. And then for Tuesday, northwest winds picking up here, gales on the south side, higher gusts coming out of the passes. Heavy freezing spray on the Bering Sea side with northwesterlies at 30, northeast 25, brisk wind advisory for Bristol Bay, and north 25, southwest of Sitkinak. Fox Islands tomorrow, north and northeast, 25 to 30 knots, strongest winds blowing across Unalaska Island. Northwest falling back to 20 knots for Adak and Atka, and from Adak westward down to 10 to 15 with pretty light gradient, and seas down to 3 to 6 feet out there as well. For the Tuesday outlook, mostly west on the light side here to southwest, even lighter. And then roughly Atka Island, northwest, 20 knots, gradually increasing. And then we've got some gale force winds there, south side of Unalaska Island from the northwest throughout the day. And heading to the southwest coast, light winds all the Bering Sea tomorrow, maybe 15 knots here south of Nunivak Island. Otherwise light winds, seas pretty slight where it's ice covered, no seas, but 2 to 4 feet out south of the ice edge or west. And then for Tuesday, northwest, 25 knots here for the Pribilofs, and north 25 south of Nunivak Island. So brisk wind advisories here. Lighter winds, but again, gradually coming up, increasing to about 20 knots St. Lawrence Island southward. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 20 knots tomorrow. Central coast, a little lighter, then back up to 20 on the west side, then dropping back down to 10 from Cape Thompson down to Wales. Then for Tuesday, things looking pretty light out here on the west side from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, just 10 knots. 15 knots there, the western coast, and then 20 knots to the central coast, and then brisk wind advisories, a pretty good stiff easterly wind in store for that area on Tuesday through the afternoon. For tonight again, just some leftover shower activity here with a front, a weak trough with that increasing southeast flow later tonight. But that's going to keep the showers in, especially along the coastline there, and to a much lesser extent elsewhere. Narrow band of snow through here. Northward bound storm here bringing wind and rain definitely by tomorrow morning right into Kodiak. Gale force winds, Shelikof Strait. As I mentioned, everything advancing northward and gradually eastward. Nice day tomorrow over the interior, except for this band of persistent light snow over the northern interior. No change in the Bering Sea. That first front kind of dies off the coast. Next storm comes up, more gale force winds with it coming in during the afternoon hours. Snow along the west coast. And that's a look at the weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.